Since no one donated during the last call, it's time. It's time for me to pull this out. Now, remember a little while ago, I talked about this on stream. I mentioned it vaguely that, like, oh, you know, someone on Twitter, like, was posting about how, oh, this black lady had like a genealogy test done, and it turns out she was descended from slaves, and she wanted she was descended from slave owners, and she wanted reparations. And we all made fun of how stupid a position that was, and then we moved on with our lives. Michael Knowles heard me talk about this through the ether, I guess, through just some sort of sensing it in whatever evil force he taps into, and put out an entire video along those exact same lines. So let's take a look at Michael Knowles' take on this. Probably not going to be good.
Sunny Hostin, a host at The View, who is black, or is she? She recently went on the show of Henry Louis Gates. He's a liberal Harvard professor of Obama Beer Summit fame. Remember, he got hassled by the police a little bit, and then Obama weighed in and attacked the police, and then they all had a beer together for some reason. Anyway, and I'm going too much into detail here. Sunny Hostin went on his...
Remember how Obama, like, did that beer summit to try and be like, hey, we can all reconcile our differences, and it was actually kind of a nice gesture, sort of, maybe. Like, at least it had, like, a nice intent behind it. But Michael Knowles is just like, and then they all went out for a beer for some reason, dipshit. Like, every single thing Obama did to try and reach out to people like this, like, absolutely failed in every conceivable way.
His show, because he has a show where he traces people's genealogy back, and she discovered she's a descendant of slaveholders.
Wow.
Like, I'm sorry, can we just, like, bring it back a little bit here? Like, he's going like, yikes, she just learned that she's descended from slaveholders. Tee hee hee. Like, it's so weird. It's so, like, he absolutely does not realize the implication here. I don't think in the next 8 minutes of this video he's going to realize how a descendant of slaves might have slave master ancestry as well.
Wow. I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican, you know, half Puerto Rican. I didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
Yeah. So how are you feeling, my friend?
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared roots.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that. And I think it's great for our children to know this information. I guess it's a fact of life that this is how some people made their living, on the backs of others.
Yeah, it's a fact of life, huh? It's really shocking.
Is the way that he's trying to interpret this to, like, give him the maximum benefit of the doubt? Is the way he's trying to interpret this essentially that, oh, her family, like, well, clearly her family came all the way from Spain and has just been Spain the entire way through? Like, it's an uninterrupted chain of just, like, slave owners, no slaves in between?
It's kind of depressing. Ooh, it's kind of uh-oh. Then she goes on The View, and her View co-hosts say, hold on, Sonny, you've for so long been a promoter of reparations for slavery. Now that it turns out you're a descendant of slaveholders, does that change your view?
When I spoke to my mom about it, she was deeply disappointed. She actually cried about it. And then she said, maybe that's why I have been so connected to Black culture, because it's an atonement in my spirit. And I received that. I also found out that, and there were slaves on both sides of her family, mothers and fathers, but we are 7% indigenous Puerto Rican, Taino.
I'm sorry, wait.
Family, mothers and fathers, but we are 7% indigenous Puerto Rican.
There were slaves on, but yeah, no. So it's not an Michael Knowles. You dishonest weasel. She write. That's okay. Wait, that's actually a good question, Otis Crane. Does she also not get it? It's like she's running with the narrative that Michael Knowles is, as if like they. I have to say. I think she might not be grappling with that element. Yeah. Also, yes, the Taino people, like most indigenous people in America, were genocided. Shakespeare, oh my god, that's Michael Knowles. Every time I jump into the middle of stream, it becomes increasingly more and more degenerate. Yeah.
Taino, mothers and fathers. I also found out that, and there were slaves on both sides of her family, mothers and fathers, but we are 7% indigenous Puerto Rican, Taino. So I'm proud of that.
So she is also, her ancestors were also slaves and the indigenous victims of a genocide. They weren't all slave holders. It's kind of what we're getting at here.
I believe in reparations, by the way, so y'all can stop texting me and emailing me and saying that I'm a white girl and that I don't deserve reparations. I still believe that.
Someone did that to you?
Yeah.
I don't know who sent her a thing telling her she was a white girl.
Okay, it's too much, people.
But clean off your television screen.
Yeah, that's a lot. So I still believe in reparations. I still believe this country has a lot to do in terms of racial justice.
I still believe in reparations, and I still believe that I deserve them, even though I am descended from slaveholders. Why did
he literally doesn't get it? This is gonna be 6 minutes of him not getting it.
does Sonny Hostin get to pick which ancestors count? Why does she get to do that, but we don't get to do that? She says, first of all, it's so pathetic. She says, look, I'm still descended from slaves, so I still get my black card. And I'm also descended from Taino Indians. I'm really happy about that. I'm so happy. I'd be so depressed if I were white, because it's evil to be white, because it's the worst thing you can possibly be. But I am.
They literally didn't. Okay, so for those of you who are unfamiliar with this genealogy program, one of the reasons it's kind of an important show is because it helps African Americans, not always, mind you, the focus of the show, but it helps like African Americans like rediscover where they came from in really wonderful ways. Something that's really important because there are a lot of white people in America who can trace their genealogies back quite a long ways. Not so much for people who are commodified by the transatlantic slave trade. There's a reason why they're called African Americans and not like, talked about by like, oh, Ethiopian, etc., Ethiopian American, whatever. That's because their culture was genocide. It was stripped away.
am part white and specifically like slaveholders. So, but we're just going to ignore that, and I still deserve reparations because the white ancestors don't count.
I feel like I shouldn't have to explain that reparations would also go to people who are affluent. Like it didn't matter if you were a rich Japanese American after Japanese internment. You deserved reparations for having been interred, regardless of how wealthy you happened to become afterwards. Like, yeah, sorry.
Because white people are terrible and whites have no culture, and even they have
Whiteness is not a culture. White people have cultures, like Swedish culture and Greek culture, etc., etc., etc. There are cultures primarily made up of white people, but there is no white culture.
have a culture which is evil, and that's why we have to punish them. But even though I'm part white,
It has nothing to do with punishing you for being white. It has everything to do with making up for hundreds of years of stolen wages, frankly.
you don't have to count that part. You only count the good part, which is the indigenous part and the black part. Give me my reparations. So does this work for all of us? Right now, go to goodranchers.com. Use
Oh, I guess it's an ad. Time for an ad read. Okay.
despite my swarthy complexion, I am, as long as you count Sicilians and Italians as white, which is, I suppose, somewhat controversial, then
What? Does Michael Knowles not consider Italians white? What? Who outside of like white supremacist groups are nitpicking over like being like Italians not being white?
I'm totally white, completely not one drop of exotic ancestry in me. Just the lowest we go is Sicily, sometimes called North Africa. So maybe there, but then all the way up to Scotland. That's pretty much where my ancestry is. So by Sonny Hostin's standards, I guess I'm totally evil. I need to totally contribute to reparations. I don't get any reparations out of it.
Sonny Hostin never said white people are evil.
There is a white culture. It's white thick substance like mayo, but it has no flavor and no texture.
What? That's weird. Thank you for the $5.
Even though the largest mass lynching in American history, by the way, took place against Italians, which that's also written out of our history, but I'll leave the racial grievance to other people. One of my ancestors.
Wait. Citation needed? Largest. Oh, interesting. 1891 New Orleans lynchings. The 1891 God. The 1891 New Orleans lynchings were the murders of 11 Italian Americans and Italian immigrants in New Orleans by a mob of Caucasians for their alleged role in the murder of police chief David Hennessy. After some of them had been acquitted at trial, it was the largest single mass lynching in American history. Huh. The more you know.
George, I guess he's slightly, because he died, he's like a great uncle, George Cobb Knowles. He fought for the Union in the Civil War. He died at the Battle of Boydton Plank Road. So am I absolved? Do I have to pay the reparations to Sonny Hostin, who's
the state has to pay reparations. That's the state that benefited from the free labor of slaves has to pay the reparations. That would be the entity paying the reparations, not you.
I don't have any slaveholders in my ancestry. Sonny Hostin does. So shouldn't she be chipping into the reparations? Why do I have to chip in? I have relatives who died in the Civil War for the cause of abolition. She didn't. Does she? Right? She got people who were defending slavery. How come she gets to pick which ancestors count and she's totally absolved of any historical guilt, but I don't? I, who actually don't seem to have a ton of historical baggage by the modern standards, how come just by being a white guy, even a vaguely white guy, I'm pretty tan. How does any of this make any sense? It doesn't, obviously.
This is a really weird conversation, or I guess argument to have with himself, especially considering he opened up this like diatribe by saying, you know, it's still arguable whether or not Italians are white or not, and then proceeds to be like offended on behalf of like whiteness. It's weird. I don't think he's at all aware of all of the weird factors at play here.
They're just sort of making it up as they go along. Sonny Hostin went into that Henry Louis Gates episode with the conclusion, which is, I am victim, I deserve your money, I deserve your pity, white people evil, don't call me white person, how dare you, she'll go on The View later, she said, don't.
Yeah, the thing is, and I know that there's a history of not considering Italians white, for example, but the people who generally don't consider Italians white are Michael Knowles' key audience. You know? Like, the key demographic of, like, ghouls who watch Michael Knowles is also the same ghoulish demographic who don't think, like, Italians are white enough to be white. You know? Like, that's the weird part to me.
Don't you dare stop calling
Sam.
me white. It's like calling someone evil. It's like calling someone a Nazi. It's like it's the worst thing you could be called.
Guitar. No white names will survive. No white names left alive. BWA will arrive. No white names will survive. Bawahahaha. BWA.
Paladin, thank you for that BWA spirit. Gifting LG Thesian a sub. Hell yeah, let's go. But like, yeah, no, you know, it's a joke in like leftist circles where it's like, haha, white is the worst thing that you can be. Counterpoint, you're white. Haha. Like that's a thing that like people say, whatever. But to equate that to like thinking that white people are all the devil, or like white people are the new Satan, or white people are the worst thing since Nazis, like this is a weird position to have. Like, who's Michael Knowles getting this from? Is it like Black Hebrew Israelites? Like what's going on here?
She went in with that conclusion. And then Henry Louis Gates says, hey, so the facts are you're a descendant of the people that you consider the most evil people in the world.
Yeah, and again, Michael Knowles, just circling, since you kindly circled back to this, to point out specifically to you, if a, slave owner was interested sexually in a slave, that slave was considered their property, and oftentimes they took advantage of that relationship to rape their slaves. That's how you would get people who are descended from slaves and generally slave owners at the same time. That's how that would happen. But yeah, you're really showing Sonny Hostin there.
She says, nah, la, doesn't matter. I'm 7% Taino. I'm good. I'm fine. La 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 la. The folly of it all, though, of course, is that one, if you trace your ancestry back even one generation, you'll find plenty of evil things because the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. You don't even have to trace your ancestry back. You can just look at yourself and you've committed all sorts of evil things. And if you
You know, that's an interesting thing to say while talking about a story about slavery, Michael. Are you saying that you currently employ slaves, Michael? Like, oh, you don't even need to trace your family back. You know, you might be committing one of those evils right now in your basement. Like, that, does he not realize how psychopathic he sounds? Like, he genuinely is just so brain
White
dead.
names. All that see. Darkness will fight. Down with the white names will change. Target in range. BWA in sight. Bringing the light. Guitar solo.
Paladin, thank you for gifting Rez Sutra a sub. I very much appreciate it. All right, let's finish this.
believe, as Christians do, in human solidarity, if you think that we all came from a single set of ancestors who we call Adam and Eve, then you believe that we all share in the fallenness of human nature, undertaken by an abuse of the free will of our first parents. But that's fallen. That view is now called superstitious and crazy and ridiculous. So instead, we end up with the
yeah, cause it is. Cause it is.
justifications of Sonny Hostin, which seem a little crazier and more ridiculous if you ask me.
Yeah, it's such a crazy concept that a slave master might rape one of his slaves that was legally considered his property, that he could do with what he wished. Yeah, what a crazy idea. That certainly has never happened before. Haha. It certainly wasn't an incredibly pervasive and common problem. Haha.
That was a good clip, huh? Come on. Just between us girls, you know.
Why is he so weird?
And you got to ring the bell and subscribe to the Michael Knowles YouTube channel, and then you'll get every other clip ever. See you next time.
He's so uncomfortable, dog. He's so, like, even his little, like, ad reads, it's so weird. Honestly, again, I just keep, my mind keeps going back to Shark 300. We gotta keep calling these people out for being the weird little freaks that they are. You know? Michael Knowles is a freak. Like, you shouldn't allow children to be alone with him. Kind of freak. My God. What a little weirdo.